Dr. Mauri Pelto, uh, great to see you. We spent some time together on one of your annual trips to the Cascade Glaciers in 2012. You have been a constant source of great information for me over the last several years. And I wanted to just have a little conversation uh, about current developments in your specialty, which is ice globally. And we're looking at an item in the news recently about this ship full of scientists who have been recently rescued from Antarctica. Is that something you have any thoughts on, or do you know anything about that situation?
Well, I have a couple of colleagues who were on that ship and who had projects that were going, and so their years of planning, uh, either they were on one of the rescue ships or that ship was kind of interrupted, so they're not going to get to do their particular brand of research this year. And so for them, you understand from being in Greenland this summer that not everything goes quite right weather-wise, et cetera,
Right.
and that people don't realize that when you go to work in Antarctica or Greenland that the best laid plans aren't always going to work, and that's just part of it. It's a harsh environment, and so we're reminded of that with this story.
I think a lot of people don't appreciate how much ice is down there, and that even if a substantial fraction of that ice melts enough to raise sea level many meters, there's still going to be a lot of ice down there. Isn't that correct?
That is, and in this case, I think one of the interesting things is just the changes that can occur. In this case, a couple of years ago, the Mertz glacier tongue that stuck out into the ocean broke off. And when that happens, of course, that was sticking out into the ocean and it was kind of holding sea ice in check in that particular region. And so you lose that tongue of stability. And basically, it's like taking out a dam, like an ice dam. And all of a sudden it breaks down and the sea ice is more able to flow. And particularly, it pinned in a bunch of really old multi-year thick ice. And so really that's kind of the untold story of this is kind of that Mertz ice tongue breaks off, multi-year thick sea ice is on the move, gets into the path of this vessel, gets frozen in. It wouldn't happen, of course, in the most Antarctic ice is single year ice.
Yeah. So what you're saying is it's actually an artifact of some of the melting ice down there that this ship was in the path of a whole lot of free floating ice that would not have been there or would not have been moving like that a few years ago.
Probably not.
Okay. So you are in Massachusetts. Are you experiencing the current winter storminess?
Yeah, the storm has left us today, but yeah, it was a very interesting snowstorm. I don't think since I've lived in Massachusetts for 25 years, I don't think I've had this kind of cold snowstorm in Massachusetts. In Maine and in Michigan, I've experienced kind of 0 degrees and snowing hard, but not here in Massachusetts.
So can we draw any conclusions? It's winter. It's snowing. What we're told is that that means there's no climate change. What conclusions can we draw from this?
I can't really draw any conclusions from this. Yeah, if you had heartburn this morning, can you draw conclusions about that you should never eat fish for dinner anymore?
Well, there you go.
But no, I mean, I think that kind of the interesting thing is if it fits into a broader context, that's one thing. But the context here was 50 degrees and rain for 3 days over the weekend before Christmas, so that we've had that term that various people have used, weather whiplash, and that's really what we've been experiencing here on the East Coast. And it's different across the country, but the jet stream is in a certain position and it kind of delivers a certain weather pattern while it's in that position. And the Midwest has been suffering from the coldest weather Well, the West Coast has been suffering really good weather. Suffering is not the right word, I suppose.
Right,
And then we've been at the other end of that with the back and forth.
right. They're nude sunbathing at Lake Tahoe while we're shivering here. So that's the jet stream. Now, your specialty is mountain glaciers, and you were in the Cascades this past year for what, the 30th year?
Yeah, it was our 30th year of field work, and it was not a happy year for the glaciers. Certainly, it ended up pretty decent winter, but then it ended up being the warmest July, August, September period up where the glaciers were. And the unusual thing was something we haven't seen before, and that is a lot of thunderstorms. When you talk about Seattle and the mountains there, you usually don't think about thunderstorms very much. But they got into this pattern of a lot of thunderstorms in August. And the strange thing was it just didn't cool down at night. And so it was the minimum temperatures that were really exceptional this summer. It wasn't so much the maximum temperatures. And it was just very odd that, in the summer you have a nice sunny day in the mid 50s or something on the glacier. And then at night, the surface will freeze, shutting off ablation for 8 to 10 hours. But this summer, it just never got down to the point where the glacier surface would freeze. So ablation just kept going right through the night.
So
So
just 24-hour melt.
right. So, an unusual melt season the same way we saw an unusual melt season in Greenland in the summer of 2012. So it's not like every year, every place you see the same kind of melt season, but we're seeing these unusual melt seasons in different places in different years. But it seems like when you look at the Alps, they've had some unusual melt seasons as well. 2012 was an unusual melt season in the Alps. And so it's not always synchronous around the globe. But I'm sure New Zealand, they're in the midst of their melt season this year, and their glaciers are certainly going to really suffer because it's been exceptionally warm there.
Right. So one of the news items that came across this morning was about snowpack in the California Sierras and the impact on water supplies in that area. Is that something you know anything about?
Well, the whole West Coast, is that ridge that's been near the West Coast has been shunting all the systems, of course, north of it, somewhere into Alaska or British Columbia, and then they
Meaning
descend.
the jet stream ridge.
Right. So all the storms have not been impacting the West Coast, and that includes all the way up to Seattle. The snowpack in near the glaciers is the lowest in the last 30 years for January 1st. At each location is different, but at the locations nearest the glaciers that I work with, that's the case. And California is even worse off than that. And the bad thing for them is that at some point we are going to get that jet stream transition here. Usually you don't get stuck in a jet stream pattern for like the whole winter, and so they'll get some precipitation, but you're supposed to be at half of your annual snowpack by the end of January, and so they're going to have just too much catching up to do.